Hi, so can you tell everyone your name?
Yes, my name is James Neuenschwander. I'm a physician in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And currently I'm board certified in both emergency medicine and integrative medicine, and I've been in practice for almost 30 years.
So when you first started out to be a doctor, and you went into school to train to be a doctor, what kind of training did you get on vaccines?
At that time, there wasn't much training at all. I don't know that it's changed very much. Basically, it was here's the schedule. These are the saviors of mankind. They're safe, and you need to make sure everybody's vaccinated. And when I first started out, I really was called myself a vaccine Nazi.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I believed that not vaccinating children was tantamount to child abuse. I really believed in them that much.
Many of us did. So you start out and you become what kind of a doctor do you become when you leave medical school?
Well, for me personally, I started in general surgery. I had an epiphany halfway through my residency where I realized I wasn't really doing what I wanted to do in medicine, which was to basically help people cure their diseases, and they don't teach you that in medicine. They teach you how to manage illnesses and not really how to get at the root cause and cure things. So that got me out of the mainstream of medicine. I started a practice in which I started learning about nutrition and other approaches to health, and started my own practice at that time. And at that point, I had young children. Also had a mother who handed me a book called, I believe it was A Shot in the Dark or something like that.
Shot in the Dark. Saved a lot of people.
Yes, so that was the first book I read, and I thought my mother was crazy. But my firstborn had localized reactions to his vaccine, a 2-month vaccine, and then 4-month vaccine was even larger. And at that point, it was my wife at the time who said, "We're not doing this anymore." But this is long ago when you could opt out of vaccines. It wasn't a big deal, and that was the end of vaccines in my family. My youngest has not had any vaccines. That child who had the reaction, due to differences of opinion between his mother and me, later when he became an adult has become like the most pro-vaccine child out there, despite the fact that I really think he would be on the spectrum if we had continued vaccinating him. All right, because that was a DPT that he reacted to severely, and I can't imagine what would happen if he got the MMR. So he has eczema, he has allergies, and he caught up on all his vaccines when he became an adult.
Okay.
My youngest, who hasn't had a vaccine in his life, that's not true. They had oral polio. That's the only vaccine they received was oral polio. He's perfectly healthy, and he doesn't have any of these problems. And so, to me, it's like my son doesn't necessarily get that all these problems he has could be related to the fact that, he went off the deep end and caught up, and, he gets his yearly flu shot, and we don't argue about it anymore. It's his life, it's his choices. But I, again, have become one of these doctors where, because a chunk of my practice is autism, trying to help parents with children on the autism spectrum. You just hear all these stories, and I don't care what my government tells me. If I have parent after parent that sits down and tells me, and shows me videos too. I mean, we always ask for pictures before and after, and if they have videos, we look at videos. But you have a normal child, and a parent says they were normal until they received vaccine X, and they regressed. What am I supposed to think? It's just coincidence that all these kids developed autism as a result of their vaccines, or is there really a cause and effect? And I'm big into biochemistry and understand that nowhere else in medicine do we do what we do with vaccines, where we give everybody the exact same dose of something, and then we're shocked that we get some bad outcomes, and we have a vaccine injury court that's paid out whatever it is these days, 3.6 billion last I checked, for vaccine injuries. And when you look at what these injuries are, most of them are all symptoms of autism, encephalopathy and seizures and things along those lines. And what am I supposed to think? How I'm supposed to tell parents, regardless of their knowledge, they should vaccinate just because the government tells me to. I can't abide by that. I mean, there has to be a way for us to say, these are children at risk and they just shouldn't be vaccinated. And because of my experience, and I've been doing this for a long time, I've gone from being that vaccine Nazi to being somebody who, I don't even know if there's a vaccine I would recommend anymore. And that's sad, and part of it is I want parents to have informed consent with whatever I do. I mean, if I want to do any kind of procedure on any of my patients, I need informed consent. And yet I'm supposed to tell them to go get a vaccine and not have informed consent.
Are you attacked for your honest opinion?
I will be if I haven't been.
Yes.
No, I mean, part of why I can do what I do is it's a solo practice. I am not involved with any mega group. I am not affiliated with a hospital. At the moment, my practice is cash. I don't even have to deal with insurance companies telling me I didn't, do this vaccine or that vaccine. I'm not taking care of their patients the way they want me to. So I don't really have to deal with those kinds of things. And basically, most of the people that come see me, they come see me because they know my stance on this, and also they're interested in how to get well.
You are a properly trained medical doctor.
Right.
You believed in vaccines, you did everything you were told, and then you, because you are a good doctor, worked out that this is not good. So then you come on this bus and you are honest and you say, no. Why do these other doctors not do this? Why is there Dr. Suzanne, Dr. Fan, Dr. Moss, Tenpenny, Bark, all these good doctors? There's not enough. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands of doctors, and there's a handful doing what you're doing.
You have no idea how difficult it is to step outside the mold of the mainstream. We are brainwashed, and unless we're brainwashed by our education, medical education has never been like legal education where you learn by asking questions. And medical education is more, you go to the mountaintop, speak to the guru bestows the knowledge upon you, and you go forth in your life and do what the guru told you to. The vast majority of what we do in medicine is like that. And when you are in a practice and you're in a system where everything you do is under a microscope, and you are expected to step outside the mainstream, that's not going to happen. And even if you try, even as a physician, you say, whoa, this is crazy. I mean, we're just adding vaccine after vaccine after vaccine, and I'm seeing all these sick kids, and they're all getting worse. And even if you have that epiphany, and you decide, you know what, I'm going to spread them out. I'm going to only do mandatory vaccines. I'm going to not vaccinate. Then what happens? Then you get this lovely letter from the insurance company that says, well, gee, we've been monitoring your vaccine prescriptions, and you're not vaccinating enough children. And not only are we not going to cover any future care that you're providing, we want our money back because you're not taking care of our kids the way we expect them to be taken care of. So you have that.
That's a threat. That's blackmail. That's a threat.
It's financial blackmail. Okay. So as a pediatrician, which I am not, but as a pediatrician, how are you going to practice if you don't take insurance?
Wow.
Okay. So you could go all cash, but how many doctors can do that? 1 in a million. So if you're dealing with a system where the system says you must vaccinate, and not just, you hear about rewards for vaccinating, and there are out there. So, you have 85% of your 2-year-olds vaccinated, you get X amount of money from an insurance company. That's wonderful. But it's also the threats. So, I can forego, and this is part of why I got out of insurance, I can forego the financial rewards that insurance companies are going to give me if I make sure that everybody gets their flu vaccine every year and their pneumonia vaccine and all that stuff. But now it's not a matter of financial rewards. Now it's penalties. If you don't do this with X number of your patients, we take money away from you. It's very difficult. And then if you're in a mega group where it might be 15, 20, 30 doctors, and you're associated with a hospital, and you're not meeting those criteria, they actually consider that almost like a dereliction of duty, like malpractice, because this is standard of care, and you are not following the standard of care. So it's very, very difficult for a doctor
I
not to
had
do
no
it.
idea that they were under that kind of pressure.
Huge
I
pressure.
thought it was more, they were taking the money and...
And there may be doctors like that, but, I can speak for myself. I can't speak for all doctors. But I didn't go into medicine for the money. I mean, it's a guarantee of a decent lifestyle and a decent income, no question about that. I mean, you get out of medical school, you're not going to be a gazillionaire, but you're also not going to be a pauper. My point is that most people go into medicine because somewhere inside their soul they want to help people. All right, they want to do the right thing. They want to whatever it is, but most of us believe leaving medical school that vaccines are the right thing to do, and that they've altered. I believe this, that we really altered the course of humanity with vaccines in a good way. All right, but at some point along the way, if you have that epiphany, it is so difficult to go outside of this. And I'm not even talking about. I mean, you have peer pressure, you have professional pressure from your colleagues. It's like, you weirdo, what the heck are you doing? Why aren't you vaccinating these kids? Don't you understand you're causing all this harm and damage? And, who are you to go against the mighty and powerful who have all the knowledge? And you're going to go against 99.9% of all your colleagues. You think that's easy to do? No. And most people that vaccinate, I believe that they think it's a great thing. Most doctors.
They must see the injury come back in again. You saw the injury come in. I don't understand.
They will say it's random.
It's too
because the CDC says there's no correlation. Polly, haven't you read it?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a mess. But there's people... Now, when you see these people that have been injured by vaccines, not just autism, whatever it may be, eczema, allergies, all these things that they're reporting to us here on the bus, is there hope for them? Can you help these people?
Well, yes, the short answer is yes. The long answer is it depends, and it really depends on to what degree the person was injured. But if somebody has had an injury, there are many things that you can do to try and improve the outcome. And particularly if we're talking lesser injuries, if we're talking the allergies, eczema, asthma, those kinds of things, those are much easier to repair than injuries to the brain. I mean, the trouble with regression with vaccine is you literally induce an encephalitis or encephalopathy and you injure the brain, and then the question is, can you recover that brain? And the answer is it depends on what degree of injury and how long it's been. So if you bring me a 2 or 3 year old that had a regression, we've got a pretty good chance that we can do something. You bring me a 10, 15 year old, maybe not so much.
Right, now what do you think when you turn on your television, if you do even have mainstream television anymore, not many people do, and you see things like the HPV Gardasil ad, and you see doctors on television telling parents that vaccines are safe and effective and you must get your damn vaccines?
Well, number one, we're supposed to practice evidence-based medicine. So if you're going to tell me that a vaccine is safe, then you better have evidence to back it up. And the trouble is, any of these safety studies with vaccines were always done with the vaccine, the full vaccine versus the vaccine without the active ingredient. You're still giving adjuvants, you're still giving things that upset the immune system and piss it off. That's part of the foundation of what's causing the problem. There's even evidence out there now that there are people that are predisposed to these injuries because of their genetics. They can't detoxify the way they're supposed to, and you give them the same dose as you give somebody who's perfectly good at detoxifying, and they're going to be injured by it. I mean, it's kind of like alcohol. I can give 10 people a shot of tequila, and you're going to get 10 different responses. Why? Because you have got 10 different glutathione levels, 10 different livers, 10 different abilities to detoxify that alcohol. So it's the same with the vaccines. And part of what I'm trying to do is steer people away from this. I'll talk about Gardasil for an example.
Yeah.
Didn't you know, Mom? Didn't you know? I mean, come on. Gardasil protects you against they've just increased it, but it protects you against theoretically protects you against 2 types of cervical cancer. But it turns out it doesn't change. They never actually did the study on cancer. They did the study on grade 4 pap smears. Okay, so that's not cancer. That's a precancerous lesion, and it's 100% treatable and pretty curable as well. And when you look at the study with Gardasil, you still had 40% of these women getting grade 4 PAPs. So you're talking about a vaccine that's not particularly effective. And I've had, the tragedy of Gardasil is you have a normal adolescent that gets this vaccine and regresses at 12, 13, 14 years old. I mean, Or dies. But, you know, I have patients that have developed MS, multiple sclerosis type symptoms, discoordination. I mean, I had a volleyball player who, you know, gets her first Gardasil and gets migraine headache and never had a headache. Well, a headache after a vaccine should tell you have encephalitis, right? The vaccine's inducing some type of brain injury. But you know what? She got better from that, but continued to have a headache. She got her second one, and the headache worsened and stayed. And then she was sick with the flu, went to the doctor, and he said, "Oh, you're due for your third Gardasil." Gave her the Gardasil right then, and then she regressed neurologically. So here she is, a volleyball player who goes up to hit the ball, and it goes right between her hands and hits her in the head because she doesn't have the coordination anymore. She can't jump and hit the ball. And this is a perfectly healthy kid. I mean, fortunately, this kid we've been able to recover. But why go through that damage for something that is preventable? I mean, you do pap smears. This is not a problem.
Now, what are we going to do about the fear? So here's the problem. We still have parents who have an injured child, but are absolutely petrified because the news will put out meningitis alert in this area, you know, Houston polio about to come back, and parents are just petrified, and that media and
it's a beautiful thing.
Please tell us the solutions. We're waiting.
No, the beautiful thing about where we're at today is you have unlimited access to unlimited information. And any parent that comes to me and asks the question, should I continue vaccinating my child? I don't tell them yes or no, because I tell them I'm the wrong person to ask. I've seen the needle and the damage done. I've seen what's happened with vaccines and kids or teenagers as well. So I am not the right person to ask, but I do ask them to do their own research. You know, look this stuff up. Look at the studies that they say demonstrate safety of these vaccines. Look at some of the stories. You know, check out Vaxxed. You know, look at how we've been lied to about the Sentinel study on the MMR vaccine. I mean, that study that they talk about in the movie, that's what we all use to say, hey, this doesn't cause autism. You know, there's no link. And the study showed a link. It was just buried. Or actually not buried, it was removed from the data set. So when I have parents and I send them out to do their own research and decide what they want to do, invariably, without exception, they come back and say, I don't want to vaccinate my child anymore. You know, so part of it is get educated, and not just about the effects of the vaccine. Get educated about the disease. All right, measles was not this deadly killer of humanity that everybody thinks it was. All right. Measles killed people in 1900 because we were living 20 people in a 400 square foot apartment, right? Not because it was a horrible disease. Measles kills people in the third world for the same reason. Lack of good nutrition, lack of good medicine, all right? Guess what? We have both of those here. And that's why the death rate of measles, when I first started looking at vaccines, I thought the death rate for measles was 1 in 100. 1 in 100, because that's what I was taught in medical school. That was in 1910. Okay? In 1963, the rate was 2 in a million. What are we worried about here? And then you have to say, okay, 2 in a million chance of dying of measles. What's your chance of dying of the MMR vaccine? Okay?
And I'm telling you this.
Tdap, the pertussis vaccine. I mean, in my day, we were using the real one, not the acellular one. It was 1 in 1,100 kids got brain injury from it. You know, they had that study from Africa before and after the pertussis vaccine showed up. You know, no SIDS, lots of SIDS. You know, and there's parents in jail for shaken baby syndrome from vaccines. You know, and pneumonia vaccine. You know, people don't really correlate this a lot, but I deal with a lot of kids that have what's called PANDAS or PAN syndrome. So this is neuroencephalitis caused by an autoimmune disorder, and it's caused by strep. Well, I can't tell you the number of kids that have regressed after the Prevnar vaccine. That's a strep vaccine, okay? Yeah. And you know what? When I start doing the PANDAS workup, it's positive. Do they culture positive for strep? No. Where did all that come from? And then we can talk about parental rights, and does the government have the right to be shoving this stuff down our throat? All right? Because if I have a parent who's well educated, not somebody who's lazy and doesn't vaccinate their children out of neglect, But somebody who doesn't vaccinate their children, because you know what? They went and investigated this, they researched this, and they decided, I would rather take my chances with the disease than with the vaccine. And yet, despite their educated choice, the government's going to say, no, 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 you need to do this. And if you don't do this, you can't go to school. If you don't do this, we're going to kick you out of the pediatrician's practice. And that's where we're at now. And it's sad. I didn't have to deal with that when my kids were young. I could say, we opted out. And I signed a little form, and that was it.
If I was to hand you a brand new newborn baby, would you give that baby any vaccines?
No, 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 no. There isn't a vaccine worth the risk.
That's what we're saying.
There's not a vaccine worth the risk. And if you find one, let me know.